Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Health Department's Board of Health meeting. Jennifer, can I have a roll call, please?
Rubing,
Here.
Marcus,
Here.
Rolla. Here. Hankin,
Here.
McKinnon,
Here.
Kuhn,
Here.
Valerito,
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Thank you. Review and approval of the meeting minutes from March 1st, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
And moved by Commissioner Valerito. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Marcus. Any discussion? Hearing none. We have a roll call, Jen.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes.
Hankin,
Yes.
McKinnon,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Item number 4, review and approval of the special meeting minutes from March 16th of 2022.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir,
on members' attendance, you have Matt in there twice and you do not have Julie Powers in there. Can that correction be made?
yeah, let's do the motion in a second first, and then we'll make that correction. Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Valerito, second by Commissioner Rubin. Go ahead, Jen. With that correction being noted by Commissioner Brown.
Okay, very noted. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any other changes? Hearing none, now we can go.
Rolla,
Yes.
Hankin,
Yes.
McKinnon,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes. Okay, review and approval of the agenda.
So move.
Moved by Commissioner McInnes. For second, seconded by Commissioner Roloff. Any further discussion on the agenda?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was supposed to have the proposed rules of public comment on this agenda. And we had a bit of a mix of communication, so I would ask that we could add those rules discussion under right under where we're at. So it'd be number 6, rules of public comment.
Actually, I think it would be right under public comment. Is that where you were aiming?
I had it before. It doesn't really matter. Either way, it's fine.
Okay. Any further thoughts from the board?
Well, we just got the handout just now. I like to see stuff in advance so I can spend some time on it.
I think,
You saw it last month and there was one minor change since then. So I don't think there's any big surprises.
Well, other than it wasn't on the agenda and it was just here when I found it today. Those are the only 2 surprises that come to mind.
Is this a result of a committee or a submission by a single commissioner?
this, I believe this is from the bylaws committee that's been working on reviewing and updating our bylaws.
You know, if we put it in, we've got a lot of stuff to do. And I don't think it's the top priority. I would suggest first of all, it should be for discussion only. There shouldn't be any action on it. Second, if we're going to do it, let's put it down after we do things that are more important, like the audit and description of the role of the board and contracts. I mean, I just find this not the most important thing to discuss this afternoon.
Well, then I would move to amend to put it anywhere the chair decides on the agenda.
You could put it before the second public.
Well, it's actually, it's already been moved, right?
Well, I don't know, Jairus, did you make a motion to add that?
I don't think I made a motion. I think I asked
Okay.
for it.
Well, therefore, I would like to make a motion to add this to the agenda as seemed deemed appropriate in the location by the chair.
We already have a motion and a second, so you want to amend it, or is that what you? want?
No, I don't think we did have a motion.
I did. I made the motion for public two for the agenda.
Yeah, you did. There was, I think.
We did for this comment.
That was during the discussion. So did you want to, do you want to?
Perhaps I misunderstood you.
Well, I made the motion to accept the agenda. It was seconded, and then we had discussion where Jairus made this. So now he's making another, or somebody's making another
Yeah,
motion.
I agree. I would, that would be
Okay.
my request to make a amended motion.
Yeah, okay.
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 I'll support that.
Okay. So I have a bunch of motions and amendments.
Right.
As I understand it, it's been moved to approve the agenda with a amendment by Commissioner Marcus to add discussion of the public rules notice discussion
Submitted by committee.
submitted by the bylaws committee. Can we put that at item number 16, just above public comment at the end of the meeting?
That'd be great.
Everyone in agreement there?
That's fine.
Yes.
I don't think we need a roll call vote. All in favor? Say
You
aye.
got to vote on the amendment. and then-
We do, you're right.
Yeah, we
You're
have to
right,
vote on the
thank you.
amendment.
Okay, it's all right.
Okay, so it's been moved, seconded, and amended. Let's have a roll call vote on the amendment to add the public notice rules discussion to our agenda right above item number 16 in public comment.
McKinnon,
Yes.
Coon,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Ruby,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes,
Lincoln.
Yes.
And now before we do the full motion, and we've got that sorted out, is this for discussion purposes?
This has, well, you want to respond to that, Jared, since you're the chair of that?
Yeah. The bylaws committee has recommended this for adoption, so it would actually be an action. So going forward, this would be the rules for the Board of Health for public comment.
So we just sort of flop it in today and vote on it and
Well,
off we go.
I
So-
think understand Commissioner McGinnis's point. I think we can have, as is presented here today, it's listed as public notice rules discussion. I think we can have the discussion today. If there's any amendments that need to be made, I think we can put this on the agenda for our next month's meeting to actually vote to put them into place. I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to make any major differences
Right.
for our purposes here today.
Good.
Are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Any other discussion on the board?
yeah, I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
We're looking at this, the rules. Now, I wasn't part of that, and it's like, yes, we should, as a board, all 6 of us, 8 of us, sit down and go over these before we start voting them into place. So I'm
Which
saying,
we'll have that discussion when we actually take this up on the agenda, Shirley,
okay.
to discuss that.
That's.
But we
fine.
won't vote until next month on whether or not these are adopted.
Okay, because I don't want to be sitting in the dark over here.
Okay, I think we've completed item number 5, the review and approval of the agenda.
We approved the amendment, so now we can approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Well, you already have the motion. we
Have
approved
that, and it's been seconded, I believe, by
Yeah.
Commissioner Roloff.
Yeah.
Voice vote, please, Jennifer.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Ruby,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes,
Lincoln,
Yes.
McKinnon,
it. Yes.
Coon.
Yes. All right. Item number 6, public comment. I'm going to read the current rules that we have. Thank you. This is 4, 5, 22. I have 2 people listed on that signed up that want to address the board. I'm going to briefly read through the rules, if I can find them again.
They're before the. agenda.
They are, right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie.
Okay.
There will be a sign up sheet for those who wish to, well, let me start at the beginning. The availability of public comment is recognized by Robert's Rules of Order and the Michigan Open Meetings Act to provide for orderly comment from the public. To that end, the following information is provided. There will be a sign up sheet for those who wish to speak during public comment. A person who wishes to speak during public comment will first obtain recognition by the chairperson before speaking. Number two, the person will stand at the podium so that the microphone located there will be able to amplify the person's voice. The person addresses the chairperson on behalf of the entire board. Public comment is not to be addressed to individual commissioners or staff. The person will state their first and last name with spelling of the name if necessary. There's a 3-minute time limit for each speaker. There will be someone keeping time. After you state your name and spelling, they will start the timer. Once you hear the ding, please be respectful and end your comment. The speaker may speak only once at public comment. There is no provision for another audience member to donate their 3-minute time to a speaker. A speaker will be out of order if the speaker disrupts the meeting, fails to be germane, by speaking longer than the allotted time, by speaking vulgarities, or by making a personal attack on a board member or health department employee that is unrelated to the performance of that person's duties. If a speaker is called out of order, that speaker will not be able to speak again at the same meeting. If the speaker continues to disrupt the meeting or is disorderly, the chairperson may request the removal of the speaker by law enforcement. Members of the public shall refrain from interrupting the designated speaker. The chairperson may interrupt the speaker at any time to enforce the rules. Members of the public are not to approach the board members or distribute any materials during the meeting. Members of the public shall not engage in disruptive, discourteous, belligerent, impertinent, threatening, disparaging, or otherwise uncivil behavior. Members of the public who refuse to conform with the rules, despite being cautioned to do so by the chairperson, may be asked to leave the meeting and/or will result in a suspension of proceedings and adjournment. The chairperson will have the discretion to permit members of the public to speak at times other than the times reserved for public comment. Having said all that, I don't have that committed to memory yet. On the list that I have, starting with Mary Moore from Emmett County. Yes, if you so desire. Brenda Calbita.
I'll wait till the second as well.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to address the board? Hearing none. Presentation of the 2021 audit report by Dennis Gartland and Neergarth.
They are joining us by Zoom.
Ah, okay.
Bring them up on the screen here.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. My name is Corinne Perot. I am a senior manager with Dennis Gartland and Neergarth, and I worked on the health department's audit this year. And so I'm going to work through the financial statements and show you kind of the results of your audit, and then also review graphs.
Okay, Kim, if you're speaking, we can see you speaking, but we can't hear you speaking. So hold on just a moment, please.
Sure.
Are we ready to go?
Can you hear me now?
Are you muted on your side, ma'am? Try it again.
Can you hear me now?
Nope, still can't hear you, sorry.
What about now?
Nope. Our IT folks are working on it on this end.
Was supposed to be coming out of those speakers.
Supposed to be going over right now.
Kim, try it one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
Okay.
How nice of you to join us.
Yes, sorry about that. My name is Corinne Perot. I am a senior manager with Dennis Gartland and Airgarth, and I was on the team, part of the team this year to review or to complete the audit for the health department. So I'm going to quickly go over the financial statements, some highlights from those, and then also review the graphs with you. And I also have the partner on the engagement, Trina Oakes. She is on and she will review the audit related communications letter with you. So I'm hoping to share my screen here. Is that an option? If not, I can just walk you through the bound copies.
It is an option, yes.
Try it.
Okay. All I see is an option as a whiteboard to share. Don't see the,
I think all the members of the board have a bound copy in front of them. If you want to just direct us to page numbers, we might be able to. I mean, that doesn't help the audience necessarily, but.
sure. Yep, so bear with me. I'm going to have two screens running here. So I'm going to be looking off to the other screen, but I'll walk you through the statements. So first, I'm going to start with the financial statements and audit report. This is probably the largest bound copy that you have here. And I'm going to flip you in towards Roman numeral page 3. The page numbers are down there at the bottom. And so this here, you should be seeing kind of two tables split halfway between the page. The first table towards the top is going to be effectively your balance sheet for the year. So I'll just review some highlights here. I'll run down the 2021 column and highlight some of the totals. So your total assets were the 8.469 million. And that was an increase over 2020 of about 461,000. Your total liabilities there were about the 4.1 million. And that was a decrease over 2020's total liabilities. And that decrease was about $242,000. So that decrease primarily is actually related to the pension liability and its components that are outstanding. There was a decrease in that liability. And then your ending net position, there is the 4.198 million. And that was an increase over 2020 of $254,000. Are there any questions there on that high level balance sheet? All right, then I'll move on to the next portion of that page, bottom half. This is going to be effectively your income statement for the department as a whole. So your total revenues, again, in the 2021 column is what I'm focusing on. So the total revenues were the 28.6 million. And that was an increase of about 3.9 million over 2020. And then the program services or program expenses for health services, that was the 28.3 million. And then your change in net position, which is effectively your income, net income for the year, that's $254,000 was the total there. And that was a decrease of about 568,000 over 2020's net income. Are there any questions there? If not, then we can move on, flip forward a couple more pages, and we're going to flip to page number 2 at the bottom. This is going to be the report of independent certified public accountants. This is on our letterhead, is what we're looking at. So this is our audit report. This is what we issue ultimately at the end of the audit. So there's a lot of boilerplate language in here. I won't read all this to you. I'll just focus on some highlights here. So about halfway through the page there, We do remind you that management is responsible for the preparation of these financial statements in accordance with GAAP. And our responsibility as your auditors is to express an opinion on these financial statements, and that's what this letter is doing. If we flip over one more page to page number 3, the opinion paragraph towards the top of the page. Bear with me, I'll kind of summarize this. So in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects for the respective financial position of the health department as of September 30th, 2021, and its respective changes in financial position in accordance with GAAP. So what that long sentence is reads as is actually an unmodified opinion, is how that's called, which is a clean opinion, which is really the highest level of assurance that we can provide on a set of financial statements. So we do commend Ms. Pierce for all of her work through the audit, and Ms. Peacock for all of her work oversight of the organization to achieve that level of assurance yet again this year. Are there any questions on that?
I've got one.
Sure.
First of all, congratulations to staff. What she just said is the bottom line, that the staff has done an excellent job of reporting the financial condition of the health department. And that is not an accident. That's a result of hard work and diligence and all the rest. The management discussion and analysis comes from staff, but it's incorporated into the audit. I have not seen that before. Is that a format for a health department, for a staff person to incorporate, and which I found very helpful, by the way. But I had not seen that before, because as I was reading it, I was thinking, well, this doesn't sound like an accountant, but then I realized it was from staff. So do you review that letter? Is that part of, since it's bound in with your document, do you consider that something you are in agreement with as best you can?
Yeah, to the extent that the numbers are in there, so that is your, sorry, let me back up. So the management discussion and analysis is required for all governmental entities. That is something that needs to be in governmental entity financial statements. And it is prepared by management. It's management's opportunity to sort of relay the results of the financial statements and activity in sort of a more of a layman's terms. And so I think that these typically do a pretty decent job of depicting what's happened in the year and sort of taking out the accounting, the GAAP language and putting it into more layman's terms. So yes, we do review that as a part of the audit, and we review the numbers and for the most part attest that there is that I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words, but attest that that information is accurate as far as we understand. The portion on the factors bearing on the future of the organization, that is management's depiction of what is going to happen in the next year to the health department that may impact things.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Rubin.
Yeah, Corinne, I was just curious, how many years has your company audited the health department? You know?
I don't know offhand. It's been many years. I believe I've been on the audit, I believe, for almost 15 years. So at least that long.
Okay. And the reason I asked the question is because at our county, Antrim County, we had the same firm that did our audit for at least 10 years. And this year we went with a different company, not because the company did a bad job, but because it was recommended to us that a new set of eyes from a new company is sometimes a beneficial thing for auditing governmental agencies. So that's why I asked the question. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep.
We do put our audit out for bid every 3 years also, by the way. So this is the 3rd year of this most recent bid.
So it'll be going up for bid again in 22.
Correct. I spoke, well, when Trina talks during her time, she may mention that she did offer to do a 1-year extension. I forget what you called it, Trina, and I'll let her talk about it when it's her turn, but a bridge, in case you decide that you'd like to have keep the same auditors, while we don't have a CFO. We're having difficulty filling that position, and so that's an option too, but normally we would put it out for another 3-year bid.
Any other questions from the board before we move forward? I have a couple of questions regarding the pension liability, so I don't know if now is a better time to address them, or because the questions I have are further back in the audit. They're back in pages 20, 21, 22. So I don't know if you want to, I don't want to interrupt your presentation. If you want me to hold those questions until later, that's fine.
It's up to you, I suppose. While we're looking at the audit, I would say let's go ahead and answer those questions now.
Okay, so you mentioned on Roman numeral 3 that there was a decrease in the pension liability. And I am most definitely not a numbers person or an accountant by any means, but I have questions regarding on page, well, for example, on page 21, under actuarial assumptions, you used the inflation rate of 2.5%, and I'm curious how that would affect any of the numbers given our current inflation rate.
Sure. So that inflation rate is actually set by the actuaries. So the pension liability is determined and calculated by the actuaries. And so as a part of the audit, we are taking elements from the actuarial report that is done annually. And in this case, for the health department, the actuarial report, we're reporting on the December 31, 2020 actuarial report, because the 2021 is not yet available at this point. And so this data is lagging in that sense, based on what we've seen in the economy in recent months of inflation. This is not going to reflect that at this point. Does that answer the question?
Yes. So the information you had was based on previous data, and I understand that it came from the actuarial. So on page 22, the bottom half of page 22, where it shows the, and I guess I need you to give me the Reader's Digest version of what the total pension liability is compared to the net pension liability, because those are significantly different numbers. And we're talking on December 31st of 2019, our total pension liability was 6.9 million, and it has increased to 7.2. But earlier you stated that we had a decrease in our pension liability. So if you can help me understand that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Good questions. So the total pension liability, that column A, that's actually for the MERS plan as a whole. So that's on the entire state of Michigan, the all employees, governmental employees that are in that MERS plan, that's what that represents there. So that's the total pension liability for all governmental employees in the defined benefit pension plans across the state. So the column B, then there, the plan fiduciary net position, those are the assets that are actually held within that MERS pension plan. And so the difference then between those two is what creates the net pension liability that is recorded at the health department's level. And I guess, I'm sorry, I misspoke there. This is not for the entire state of Michigan. I'm sorry, I'm backing up.
I was going to ask you to clarify that, because I know Charlevoix County has $18 million in problems. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, I misspoke there. Column A is going to be the pension liability that exists for health department employees that exists. So that's the 6.9 million at December 31, 2019, and the 7.2 million at 2020. So column B then represents the actual assets that are in the plan. So what has been contributed to the plan. So at 2019, that was the 5.4 million in assets, the funds that have been funneled into the plan. And then also the 6.1 million at the December 31, 2020 balance or year end. So the difference then between those two columns, that net pension liability is the A minus B column there on the right. And that is what ultimately results in your pension liability that is recorded. So it was the 1.425 as of December 31, 2019. And then there at the bottom is the 1.1 million for 2020. And that's where that decrease is that I was talking about.
Okay, so that I understand, I think I can, I think I'm following you there. The first column, column A, is actually what we owe, essentially. Column B is what's been contributed, which gives us the column C, or A minus B, which shows that we are short 1.1 million. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board? I have one more question. I'm not seeing anybody else raise their hand, and I don't know if you can see us or not, but
I can't right now, but
okay,
I'm staring at
that's
myself. Right now.
this is a good looking group. You should check in on us. And now I lost my train of thought. So how is the pension liability affected by pay raises?
So if you, let's see, flip back to page 21, they do, as a part of the actuarial report, they do factor in a 3% standard across the board salary increase that is included in their assumptions for their reporting for the actuarial report.
Is that an annual increase, or is that?
I'm not sure I know the answer for that. I don't know, Trina, I think it is an annual increase.
Okay.
Yeah, it is an annual increase. If you look at page 20, in the middle of the page there, the employees covered by benefit terms. So this particular pension plan is closed to new entrants, and there's currently only 2 people still working who are contributing to the plan. The remainder of those people are retired and receiving benefits. So as far as salary increases, they use that to determine the contribution, part of the contribution, but really the bulk of the people that are in this plan are no longer working at the health department. They're retired.
Okay.
You can see on that same page in 9/1 of 1998, we changed to the defined contribution plan. And so we stopped putting new employees on this plan.
Thank you. Okay. And Mr. Rubing has a question.
Yeah, so it's common in government entities for us to look at the percentage that is funded by pension. Where are we at on that? And I think I saw it somewhere, but now I didn't write down what page it was on.
I mean, what percentage of the pension is fully funded? Is that what you're
Correct,
saying?
correct.
Okay, right.
Let's see, I think looks like it's on page 31. And the percentage for as of 2020 is 85%.
Got it. Thank you.
So this page is nice because it does, this will build out to actually be a 10-year historical presentation. And so you'll see the fluctuation in that funding percentage over the years in this data as we move forward. Any other questions on there?
Any other questions from the board?
Yes, sir.
I don't see any hands raised, Corinne. Please
Okay.
carry on.
Then we can move on to the graphs is what I'll review next with you. So this is kind of a good way to take the numbers out of the statements and put them into a more visual form so that you can understand them a little better. So the first page.
Can you
here-
tell us what page you're on, please?
She said
This should be,
graphs. Andrea, do you have the graphs pulled up? Maybe Andrea could share her screen while you're talking, Corinne, so that
Sure.
everybody can see the graphs, because we can't see them in the room.
okay, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, it came in a separate box.
Oh,
I thought it was-
Oh,
I thought it was in the.
Oh, never mind. We have paper copies.
Okay,
like I saw.
I'm-
okay, wait a second for it to get
Thank-
distributed.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
With
We
the
can,
graphs?
we're getting
Okay.
hard copies handed out right now.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Jen.
Mhm.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, we have them in front of us now.
Okay. Then we can start in on the first page. It should be the governmental fund equity. So this graph is showing us the ratio of your fund balance to the total fund expenditures that you have. So the total fund balance over on the right-hand side in the 2021 column is the 4.661 million. And that 16.3% is that 4.6 million divided into the total fund expenditures for the year. So this kind of showcases the historical, that historical ratio over the past, what is a 6-year trend. And you can see where that has sort of leveled off in recent years, being pretty consistent around the 16 to 18% or so. The next graph is going to be the revenue trends. So this is going to sort of showcase the movement of your revenue sources over the years. Again, this is a 6-year data. So you can see in the 2020 data point where COVID hit, and you can see where the charges for services had really dropped off there in the red line. When services were restricted. And then also you can see in the inverse of that, the increase in the state and federal grants that you received. A lot of that was CARES funding that came in 2020. And so then now moving into 2021, you can see the charges for services are beginning to return to more normal levels. And then some of that CARES Act funding is winding down, I guess, if you will, and is leveling off. Although it is still, it looks like a bit of an increase over historical data there. Next graph is going to be an expenditure trend. So this is going to showcase the movement of expenditures across sources. So the personnel services that are there in the blue, that's going to be salaries, wages, taxes, benefits, all of those pieces of your personnel costs are included there. So you can see sort of the steady incline over the years. And then again, you can see where 2020 hit, where all other service expenditures really dropped off in the year. And then now they're beginning to ramp back up as services are expanded again. So the next graph is going to be the revenues and expenditures. This is going to sort of highlight the alignment of revenues and expenditures across the years. And so this is going to kind of showcase your net income or net loss for the year. So, excuse me, in 2020, you can see net income was about 171,000, but you can see overall those values of revenues and expenditures had really dropped off in the year. And then in 2021, those two lines come together for revenues and expenditures, and that's about a $23,000 net income for the year. But overall, those data points have increased, or the revenue and expenditures as a whole have increased pretty significantly over the prior years. The next graph is going to be a comparison of budgeted revenues to actual revenues. So your 2021 actual is going to be in the red bars, and your budget is going to be in the 2021, or I'm sorry, budget is going to be in the yellow. So for the most part across the board, it looks like came in under budget with the exception of the other category. And other included in other is going to be your interest earnings, and other local grants are included in there. And last but not least is the expenditure comparison. So this is going to be budgeted expenditures to actual expenditures. So you can see personnel costs are going to be the most significant piece of your costs there on the left. 2021 actual is going to be in the red again, and the budget is in yellow. And then the contractual services, that's going to be your health services elements in there. And so those came in a little bit over budget as a whole. Are there any questions on any of that data?
Any questions from the board?
I got a quick question. So
Mr. Coombs?
is there some sort of maybe industry standard or rule of thumb or something for a percentage of fund balance and what it should be to be considered healthy?
Not, it kind of varies. We generally would like to see about at least a 3 months worth of expenditures held in fund balance. And so I think the department seems to be within that range, certainly has that available. I think there is an internal fund balance policy that is maintained as well. And I think that policy or that minimum was waived in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID and its effects on the department.
Any other questions from the board regarding, does that complete your presentation, Craig?
That is my piece, and I'll turn it over to Trina to review the audit related communications letter with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again for the separate audit related communication letter. And this letter is a letter that's required that we issue at the end of every audit. And it's required communications to those charged with governance. So those of you who were on the board last year will hear us report about some of the same things from year to year. The first page talks about compliance and internal controls. And this was a governmental audit as well as a single audit, which means that you received, or the health department received, over $750,000 in federal funds. So we do have to look at your compliance with laws and regulations, as well as general policies and procedures and specific policies and procedures over federal funding. So we did have one finding related to the programs that we tested for federal funds. It's what we call an immaterial noncompliance, meaning it didn't have any material effect on the audit, but we are still required to report it. And it's affecting procurement, suspension, and debarment. Essentially, it was for the cost of the mobile unit that was purchased through a procurement contract. Some of these regulations require that the health department determine that the vendor they're using was not suspended or debarred from working on federal contracts because it was paid for with federal money. That check was not done before the contract was issued. However, we did do that check at the time of the audit and found that the vendor was okay. So this is just an item that's, basically it's an immaterial noncompliance. It's for information. And in the health department's response is that they will check that system for any contracts in excess of $25,000, which is required by the health department policies as well as federal policies. So that basically has already, been corrected or been communicated to the department to make sure that that happens with these kinds of contracts. And then moving down to the second page of that letter, on the second page, we just have general informational items that can help the department. So the first is the capitalization policy for fixed assets. And we did find that the policy says that the health department will use maker's depreciation, which is an accelerated kind of depreciation method. And the department actually uses straight line, which is a different method. So basically, we're just recommending that you update your policy to reflect what the department is actually using, which is the straight line method of depreciation. Also, the health department does show an internal service fund on the audit. And as part of the process each year, we help the health department segregate those accounts into a separate fund. And we recommend that you consider establishing a separate fund within your accounting software to account for that, rather than as mixed in with the general operating fund of the health department. Towards the bottom of the page, this is where we get into some of those required communications that we report on each year. So the accounting policies are listed in Note A to the financial statements. The health department did adopt a new standard this year. It was called fiduciary activities. It did not have any effect on the financial statements though. We didn't find any transactions where there was lack of guidance on how to account for them. We did find that everything was presented in the proper period. And then we start talking about accounting estimates that are used in the financial statements. And so there are several items that are based on estimates that the health department uses. The cost allocations are based on your cost allocation plan. A lot of that is provided by the state of Michigan that you have to follow. So we did find that you were following that plan. As far as revenue recognition, you do have some cost settlements that are filed with the state. And a lot of those settlements are received in future years after the year has been completed. So the amount that you expect to realize on those was recorded properly under that estimate. And then when we start talking about direct patient services and fees, those amounts are required at the amount that you expect to be realizing in cash. So that will be net of any contractual adjustments. So essentially when you're billing, in particular, third-party insurance companies, you're agreeing to accept a certain rate in order to bill that company. And so there's always a portion of the total bill that comes out as a contractual adjustment, reduces that revenue. The estimate of depreciation was based on the capital outlay schedule. The estimate of the paid time off benefits was based on the hours accumulated in the pay rates. And then the net pension liability, which we had discussion about earlier, is based on information provided by MERS. And then as far as significant disclosures, we mentioned the accumulated accrued benefits, the pension plan, the net pension liability, and then the pension expense. We had no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We did have a couple of past audit adjustments that we didn't post because they were immaterial. The Emmett County building lease does have a prepaid portion to that. That was not recorded as prepaid. It was expensed in prior years and we did not adjust for that. And then the family health program accounts receivable did have a difference between the supporting subsidiary ledger and the general ledger of about $24,000, which was immaterial. We did not adjust for that. We had no disagreements with management and no consultations with other accountants. And then finally, starting on the top of page 5, we start talking about some new standards that will be going into effect in future years for the health department. The first 2 items will be effective in the year ended September 30th, 2022. The first is a new auditor reporting standard, which primarily affects the language in our audit opinion letter. It does allow the health department to engage us to report on key audit matters directly in the audit opinion letter if you would like us to do that. And key audit matters really are the items that we are required to put in the separate audit related communication letter. So if you choose to, we could put them in both spots for you. Under leases, this standard requires that any leases be recorded on the face of the financial statements, the government-wide financial statements going forward. So currently you just record leases if it's for an asset that you would own at the end of the lease, and the other leases are disclosed in your financial statements. So this standard will require you to record about $4.5 million of leases. And it's a right to use asset and an offsetting lease liability. And as part of this standard, the health department would also have to record sublease income, which is kind of the opposite. You would record the future receivable and then a right to provide a fixed asset to another entity or a leased asset to another entity. And then the next item, subscription-based technology arrangements. This is effective in the year ended September 30th, 2023. And this is very similar to the lease standard, except it's for software, basically, technology arrangements. So if you are leasing software, you're paying a multi-year cost. We typically see this with cloud-based applications. Some Microsoft softwares are now on a subscription-based arrangement rather than software that you own. You have to look at those future payments that you've signed under contract, and you would have to record that future liability and a future intangible asset for those amounts. And then finally, under other matters, we talk about the information in the back of the financial statements behind the footnotes, which includes the pension supplementary information, the budgetary comparison schedules and defined benefit pension schedules, and also the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And we did look at those and agree them to the financial records of the health department. And other than that, that's basically the letter in a nutshell. Lisa did mention about the audit contract. We did discuss earlier today that this is our final year on this audit contract. If the health department wishes to do a continuation letter for just 1 year, as you're looking for new staff people, we are, willing to provide a quote to do that. And so with that, I will open it up for any questions about this.
Mr. Rubin.
Yeah, not necessarily on this. Going back a little bit to the pension. So if we have 2 employees on the pension and we're 85% funded, I mean, obviously in my mind, when you've got only 2 left, you would hope to be 100% funded, but there's a lot of governmental entities that have a lot of room to be desired on pension funds, I've noticed. So can you comment on how you think we're doing in this specific instance, being there's only 2 employees left?
There's only 2 employees who are still contributing to the plan through payroll.
Right.
There are still, I can't remember the number, 50 or so in the plan. So the health department is still making out payments to those retired employees. So here, I will share my screen again to go back to this this trend page here where you see this. You can see over time that the funding is going up. These benefit payments have also been going up to the retirees that are in the plan. The employer contributions have also been increasing, but also the net investment income has been increasing. So it's all, in the end, this is all just a very large estimate from, information that's provided by MERS. They're looking at the life expectancy of the people currently receiving benefits, and they basically change this estimate every year. There's a couple of different factors in it. This is the notes to the schedule. These are all items that flow into that estimate that's provided by MERS. In fiscal year December 31st, 2020, which is the last valuation that was used for the health department, they did reduce the discount rate from 8% to 7.6%, which will that will effectively drive up employer contributions, and they're estimating that basically investment earnings would be less than they anticipated, and that will drive up contributions in the estimate that's calculated each year. So, overall, I think 85% is a pretty high percentage of funding compared to most MERS plans that I do see.
Any other questions from members of the board?
This isn't a question. I just want to repeat to some extent, but on page 44 is the bottom line. And I just like to reiterate that that's where I go when I read an audit, and the news is all good. When I read the report was unmodified, which means that you saw no issues, there were no deficiencies, no instances of non-compliance. The deficiency, which I read about, was understandable. Everything, and then of course the federal major programs modified. So the bottom line for the audit on page 44 is excellent news for the staff, I would believe. Can you, I mean, you've said that, I don't need to ask you to repeat it, but is this the consistent result from the audit at the health department? Is this a normal result for networks, the health department?
Yes, Yes.
Nodding.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a normal result. The health department has a very good finance department. It has, very good management. They're very involved. You saw that your budget was, you were all within your budget. There was one line item that was over, but it was offset by others that were under. The records are always very organized. I will say the last 2 years has been very challenging with funding from the state. I said this last year too, that, a lot of this additional funding that came through related to COVID, the federal government just kind of pushed it out to get it out in the community. And then later they started changing how you could use it. They started changing how you had to report it. And it's been very complex sometimes, particularly that schedule of expenditures of federal awards, to determine what needs to go on that schedule, and those amounts even change. There's some funding the health department receives where, the federal government said you don't report it on the CFA this year, you'll report it in a future year. So there's a reconciliation schedule. The health department staff have done a great job of trying to accumulate all that information and make sure it's correct so that we can audit it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the board for these ladies?
Can I just quickly compliment Andrea Pierce? She is our senior accountant who is on the Zoom as well. And she's the one who organizes everything for the auditors, works directly with the auditors. She's doing that without a CFO right now. And so she and her team have just done an amazing job. And our accounting is complex and there are a lot of rules to follow, and they do a wonderful job following rules. So thank you, Trina and Corinne, and thank you, Andrea.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, ladies. Thanks, Andrea. Not to imply that you're not a lady. That sounded wrong when it came out. I meant everybody. Thank you. Do we need a motion to accept the audit as presented?
Usually.
I believe we do.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the budget report, the audit as presented.
And be honored the second.
Been moved by Commissioner Pallarito, seconded by Commissioner Roloff to accept the 2021 audit report. We have a voice vote, please, or a roll call vote, please, Jennifer.
McKinnon,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Pallarito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes.
Hankin.
Yes. All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 8, Denise Chrysler. This is a presentation on the role of the Board of Health requested by Mr. Coons.
Denise is also on Zoom. We'll bring her up.
Good late afternoon, Ms. Chrysler. How are you?
I am just fine. I am glad I made it here. My background isn't the usual. I have about 2 o'clock, the power went out at my house and it's still out. And I grabbed everything at 4 o'clock and found a neighbor who has power. So we'll all go fine. Thank you for letting me appear by Zoom, but I wouldn't have these issues if I had driven there, and it's a beautiful day here in Lansing. So thank you. And also thank you, Corinne, for making sure the audio issues were taken care of. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Board of Health. And first, let me thank you for allowing me to speak today. And I also want to thank you for your service. I'm a member of my Board of Health. I've been a member of my Board of Health for 10 years. My Board of Health is different because we're a Board of Health to a county health department, Ingham County, and we have a lot more challenges, I think, in figuring out what do we as an advisory optional Board of Health do in comparison to what a district Board of Health does. And I also spent 6 years on my local school board, so I know the kind of commitment and time and dedication and challenges and struggles as your You're balancing competing interests, making difficult decisions, and trying to do all of this while being responsible to the taxpayers. So what I'm going to do today, and I don't have my usual setup up, so I apologize if my notes mean that I'm looking askew here. I'm going to talk about the public health code, the authority and responsibilities of the governing body for a county board of health, that's the Board of Commissioners. For district board of health, you probably know it's each of your boards of commissioners that make up the district. And I'm also going to talk about the powers and responsibilities of the health officer set out in the public health code. I've worked closely with this code for over 35 years. I served as an assistant attorney general for 20 years, and then always providing legal advice to the state health department, then worked within the state health department for many more years. And so part of my duties were providing legal counsel and advice regarding local health departments, because the state has a role. The state provides, the legislature provides, and then the legislature appropriates, and then the state health department provides local public health funding. And so as part of that, my job would be to provide legal advice to the state health department about whether the local health department was meeting requirements under the public health code for its organization, for how it carried out its duties, whether it was providing required services. These include preventing and controlling diseases and preventing and controlling environmental hazard, as well as other services. And then whether the plan of organization met legal requirements. And in 2010, I left the state health department and I went to work for the University of Michigan School of Public Health. I direct a regional office of the Network for Public Health Law. We promote and support the use of law to carry out public health responsibilities. We provide local public health training and do a variety of things. And so that's where I am today. With regard to the legal framework, first, there is a legal framework for public health. It starts with Michigan's Constitution. This requires that the state legislature pass suitable laws to protect and promote the public's health. And the legislature did do just that over the years. And the most recent law is our public health code, enacted over 40 years ago. It's a very detailed and comprehensive law, and compared to other states have comparable laws, but the laws vary in every state, and public health is something that's carried out for the most part on a state level, powers under state and local governments, and then those powers and responsibilities vary depending on how things are structured under a particular state's law. So as a lawyer, I repeatedly read the public health code. I pick up new things every time, even though I've read it over many, many years, and I try my best to convey what the law says. So just to talk about first the Board of Commissioners, and the public health code requires that every county have a health department. I'm not gonna, we have either county health departments or district health departments. We have one city, and that's Detroit, that's allowed to have a health department. In the old days, pre-public health code, villages, townships, lots of other entities, cities other than the city of Detroit had health departments, but the legislature in 1978 vested all these powers at a county level. So having health departments not optional, and what a Board of Commissioners decides is whether it wants to be organized as a single county health department or join with other boards of commissioners and form a district health department. So the Board of Commissioners also appoints a Board of Health. And if it has decided to go with a county, it appoints a Board of Health that's optional. So not all counties in Michigan have boards of health. My county does. If it's a district health department, then it's mandatory to provide a Board of Health, and then the county commissioners are required to follow the law on the composition of the Board of Health. You probably all know this, and there's a requirement that the Board of Commissioners include two, whoops, I have a friend who's just visiting me, two, I'm not at my house, guys. So Felicia, I have a dog visiting me. So as you know, you're required to have from each Board of Commissioners 2 representatives, and then you can have additional representatives if the boards of commissioners approve it. Then in deciding whether, in addition to deciding whether to form a county health department or district health department, 2 or more boards of commissioners may contract for the employment of personnel or the consolidation of functions of their local health departments under a plan, and the plan needs to be approved by the state health department. And in this way, across the nation, many health departments share services. They may share leadership, or they share particular programs or services to increase efficiencies and make those dollars go further, and thus better serve the residents of each of the participating counties. The Board of Commissioners, so it's the health department that adopts regulations. So we have, public health regulations and in probably all counties in Michigan, but the Board of Commissioners needs to approve those regulations. And if it's a district health department, Board of Commissioners for every participating county needs to approve the regulations. And what I find is almost always when it talks about governing entity. So if it's county, governing entity is the single Board of Commissioner. If it's a district, then typically the Board of Health is the governing entity. But there's many things, as I'm sure know, you go back to your respective Board of Commissioners that your commissioners must approve, such as they receive funds from the state health department that's been appropriated by the legislature, and then they in turn appropriate those funds. The Board of Commissioners may fix fees, and then the District Board of Health may also fix fees to decide whether you're going to charge residents for services and what those charges may be. There's provisions for adopting a schedule of monetary penalties that the Board of Commissioners or the District Health Board can adopt for penalties for violations of a health officer's order or regulation. And then there's also provisions, as I just sat through for the last hour, for the District Board of Health to audit and approve claims, approve the formula for, I believe, I'm not a strong person on the finance part, but as I understand it, the District Board of Health comes to an agreement on the apportionment of claims, and then that is something that the respective Board of Commissioners would approve. You're probably all much more experienced than I am on these kind of matters. So as I mentioned, I think I mentioned, it is the district. So if it's county health department, Board of Commissioners appoints the health officer. If it's a district health department, the District Board of Health is who hires the health officer. And then the public health code and administrative rules establish the qualifications that a health officer and also a medical director must meet. If the health officer is not a physician, then it's mandated that a local health department or district health department have a medical director. the public health code and the rules under the public health code define the local health officer. The health officer is the individual in charge of a local health department. It's the administrative officer, and the law talks about the Board of Health and the local health department.
Mr. Chairman, we're at 11 minutes. I don't know how long.
I had.
I'm aware, Ms. Chrysler, we have limited our presentations to 10 minutes time in the past.
I'm sorry, I had understood it was 15 minutes. I apologize.
That's okay. Unless there's objection from the board, we can go to 15 minutes.
Let's go. I think this is critically important.
Go ahead, please, ma'am.
Okay, so when you go through the health code, it repeatedly talks about the health officer and the health officer's responsibilities and powers. And I want to emphasize the responsibilities part. Our health departments, as I've gone out in the field, are very aware of what happened in the Flint water crisis and how their general powers and responsibilities were used and looked at, including involving criminal charges against our state health officer and medical executive. And the claim is failure to exercise their power to protect their citizens. So I know that our local health officers are not only looking at what power do I have, but what responsibility do I have. The Public Health Code has a number of provisions. It goes through the broad general powers of the health officer, and these include promoting the public health, safeguarding the public health, prolonging life, preventing and controlling health hazards, preventing and controlling the spread of disease, and providing expertise and education regarding health. And then for different programs, it will go through very specific requirements. There's specifically requirements when the health departments carries out the food service establishment functions for MDART at the state level. So after it talks about the general powers, then it also has very specific language about the different determinations a health officer makes, for example, determinations of whether there's an imminent threat to the public health, whether a control of an epidemic is necessary and the procedures to control that epidemic, whether there's a building or condition that's a nuisance, unsanitary condition, et cetera. And then it goes on to prescribe different actions a health officer can take, ordering an abatement of a nuisance, issuing an imminent danger order, issuing an emergency order to control an epidemic. And then there's several others, including going to court to seek an injunction. There's provision in the Public Health Code that obstructing the health officer or the person enforcing the law is a misdemeanor. And so I'll just end with just generally talking about why do health officers, why are they given such broad powers to carry out their duties? And I'll just, I didn't go back and try to read the preamble and anything from 1978, but just generally in my experience, first in Michigan, a lot of the public health happens at the local level, where people are, where they're on the ground, where they can respond to their individual county or district situations, although the state always retains the power to act to protect the public's health more generally, including within a particular jurisdiction. So there are many kinds of health hazards. These change over the years. During an outbreak or environmental threat, there may be a lot that's not known. When health officers make decisions, they need to make it in real time, and they need to make it based on their expertise, the evidence that is known at the time, and to continually assess as situations change. We have some decision-making tools we provide to local public health, and we really emphasize that you, health officer, are often making decisions as things are evolving, and having these powers allow you to be able to change course and make decisions as things are as you're learning more and more and more. But what's essential is documentation of decisions, because people will always, as we learn more, go back and second guess decisions. Health officers, do they have unfettered decision-making powers? No. They have to use professional judgment, has to make sense. The law has lots of cases about arbitrary and capricious, and when a public official's decision-making is arbitrary or capricious. And they also need to look at the other provisions that are required under the US and state constitution as far as individual rights. Those are not absolute, and often you're weighing issues as far as what individual rights are impacted, how you proportionally respond to a situation. There are so many things that a health officer needs to weigh in real time and to quickly be able to update. So with that, I will end and thank you again for letting me address you today.
Thank you, Ms. Chrysler. Moving on. Item number 9. This is a request from Commissioner Kuntz to return to verbal director reports to allow board members to learn about the work of the health department. Mr. Kuntz?
Well, that was a request that I heard repeatedly from staff at the previous meeting. And it seems to me that we've come to a time when it's appropriate for us to listen and understand the work of the health department and what they're doing. And I think it's worthwhile to hear from individual staff members. I think it's important for us to rely on staff member input, and it's important for us to rely on staff member opinions when we make decisions. The people who are actually doing the work of the health department are the staff. I think it's important that we respect that. And based on the requests I've heard from staff and from evidence I saw at the staff testimony from the last meeting, I think that we may have reached a point where there's a level of dysfunction that needs to be addressed. And I think we need to reconnect and listen to what the staff has to say and be open to what they have to say. And I think the best way to do that is to listen. And I know there's a long tradition of staff giving verbal reports. And so that's why I requested it based on what I heard from the staff at the last meeting. Mr. Marcus.
These are annual reports, correct, from departments?
No, I think at every meeting we get a report from staff reports. And lately we've been taking written reports rather than verbal reports. And I think the tradition from the health department is that they do verbal reports at the meeting.
I think it is a general practice that we should always get annual reports from departments. It's a good fiscal responsibility. We get annuals, but not only is it their time precious, so is the length of time we're in meetings all day. Sometimes it's 12, 13 hours, sometimes for me. But to ask somebody to spend extra hours on a regular scheduled period is both inappropriate and unnecessary. I can read, and I like to read the reports. I like to see the reports. I like to see the progress. I don't think we need to take up the time to hear it each time.
My initial concern was also staff time in the evenings and stuff like that. Right? I mean, I think we need
That's
to respect
overtime.
that as well. I get that.
That's actually why we're meeting, in the evenings is to accommodate Emma County.
Understand that.
We used
too.
to meet during regular business hours. In fact, our current bylaws indicate that we would meet, but we set those aside
Right.
to accommodate Emma County.
And based on what I heard from staff, that seemed to be a priority for them. For us to hear their reports. And they seem to be willing to do that. And I was concerned about that originally too. That's why it seemed like if we're meeting in the evenings, it's asking a lot for people to come in here and give reports. But based on what I heard at the last meeting, I think that is going to be in the long-term best interest of the health department. And it seems like the staff is willing and interested to do it. So maybe we could look at more input from the staff and see if they really want to do that. But if they do, I think we owe it to them to hear what they have to say.
Commissioner Rubin.
Yeah, I like in person, but time is also a consideration. And I would like to see a list of staff that would prefer to give their report verbally instead of written. I think we need more information before we
That would be an
Act on it.
administrative function. We could split the baby by asking the health officer to select one or two that have something of note for the next meeting and not do all of them. I mean, I've read them and I appreciate what Mr. Marcus said, but it might not be bad because since I don't know most of these folks, it would be okay with me if we said to the health officer, bring one in that you're especially proud of for this month. We'll read the rest. I mean, we do have time issues, no question. That's just a thought that I had.
I like the idea of getting staff input on whether this is actually something that they want to do. I don't want to put anybody in a position where they need to come in after work if that's, in their opinion, not necessary. I agree with that. So that might be yeah, go ahead.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're asking for programs that are providing presentations, I'm all for that. Because I love to see a successful program in action, who's doing it and what they're doing. But if we're going to do reports from departments, it gets to become more of a speech giver. But I'm all for having a department at every one of our meetings at a program that's being done, seeing the success, or even showing, bringing people in who are people who have benefited from it. I'm all for that. I love to see those success stories.
Yeah,
But if that's what you want, I'm for it. But if you want these arbitrarily department reports, I think it's totally unnecessary.
Mr. Chairman.
Ma'am.
And I've been sitting here for a long time. I've been through it for probably 12, 14, maybe 16 years with the health department. And I have learned a lot sitting, listening to different programs that they have. They don't bring everyone in. We know how many employees you have, 150 some. No way in heck are you going to bring that many in. But the one that's really going through a difficult time, they got something new going on. Yes, bring them to us. That's the only way that we are going to learn what the health department does. And it is, I have sat and I've been through a lot of them, and I appreciate every one of them because they brought something to me that I had no idea what in the world was going on. What's taking place? Why are you doing this? You know, if it's important, yes, please keep them coming in because that's the only way we up here are going to learn from them what their job is.
We could
So
ask,
it's not every day. I mean, I'm not asking for every meeting to bring in 10, 12 people. No, bring in the ones that's really doing something that we don't know anything about.
we could ask the board chair to meet with the health officer when he's putting the agenda together and say, is there one that you want to
Or
highlight?
2 or 3. You
No,
know,
then they
Mr. Chair.
well, you don't have to give
defeat
them
the
30.
purpose. We have an attention
you
span
don't
just
have
like
to give
everybody
them
else.
30
And it's
minutes
hard to
each.
consume, absorb multiple reports, multiple programs.
Right.
And you have to keep that in mind. You know, I don't care if you're 25 or 85, you still have to be able to absorb what's coming at you. And I'm being realistic here. And I think it is an awesome idea, if we've never done it before, to have a presentation on a program at every one of our board meetings, a presentation.
Mr. Pallarito.
I guess I would agree with Commissioner McInnes. I think maybe at your discretion and with administration, identify a program that's looking to ask the board for an item to highlight a certain aspect. Just pick one department and have them present. I think Commissioner Marcus is correct that you get on to overload. You have 6, 8 in a row and you kind of lose track. But I definitely read through the written presentation and I think that's helpful. But if we could identify at least one program per meeting and have that director speak to us and highlight their program or highlight their needs or highlight what they've accomplished, I think that would be acceptable.
I would point out a few observations. Number one, Ms. Chrysler, while I appreciate her taking the time to address us, went over 15 minutes in her presentation. If we were to accept verbal reports from each of the directors that are listed on our current agenda, and each went for 10 minutes or 5 minutes even. We have currently 19 items on our agenda. We are about halfway through, and I would agree with Mr. Marcus that even an additional half hour, while that doesn't seem like a lot, it gets to be a lot. And we're asking staff members potentially to be here. Folks, we're halfway through our agenda. We could be here for another 2 hours. What I'm hearing is maybe have one director per month come before us, and instead of presenting, or in addition to presenting the written report, be giving us a verbal presentation.
Yeah, make it a 10-minute limit.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, can I just comment for a second? on
Please.
Just some observations of historical information that some of you might not realize because you haven't been here for very long. I agree with Shirley. Over the years, the Board of Health and the administration of the Health Department have had a very productive relationship. And we've watched many times new commissioners come on. They're on for 2 years with us. Normally, the directors are sitting at the table with the commissioners, and we're all there, and you get to know each other during that time. And so when something comes up in your community about, the immunization program or WIC, Amanda, and you can pick up the phone and call her because you have a relationship with her that you've developed at this table. If something comes up related to, a well and septic permit or a food establishment that's having a problem, Dan, the environmental health director, you can pick up the phone and call him just as easily as you can call me. And so I completely respect all of your time and all of our time. I agree with you. Our meetings used to be 2 hours long at the most. And and that was when all of the directors gave a brief verbal report. Last year, at some point, we did change to just doing a staff highlight. We coordinated the subject matter of our reports so that it would all be kind of focused on one thing. I think that was going pretty well, and we would just have, we would rotate the directors giving a report. And I think that's a great idea moving forward, but it is the programs that we're talking about. And what I have seen over the years is that it is the only way that you get the opportunity to just dive into some of those programs and really get to know those directors. And they're just as important as any of us sitting at the table. I mean, I think we need to get to know each other, and we need to get back to that productive relationship. And so I would leave you with that.
I think the level of trust and confidence is lacking between the staff and the Board of Health is very obvious at the last meeting. And I will return to the fact that I think we owe it to the staff to do what they have to say. And the only way that we're going to get past this barrier is with listening and building some sort of relationship. And I think that's what the board should do, whatever you decide to do.
well, we've had a great deal of discussion. Is there any further discussion from board members? What we've not had is a motion or a second.
I'll move that we direct the board chair to work during the agenda development process to invite a director to each meeting for the purpose, limited to 10 minutes for the purpose of describing highlights of that program. Is that roughly what? No?
No, because then you run out of directors and you had to end the
Well,
process.
okay, wait a
Because you're
second.
limited to what you said.
Let's, okay, so we've had a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Marcus.
I'm not being critical. It's just that the way you worded it sounded as if once we went through all our directors, because of what you said, we run out of things to say because you said they're going to highlight their things.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of having the director or their staff members, because we have people under them that are delegated that run these programs that quite frankly, probably know a little bit more than the director themselves because they're in their trenches doing it. So I like the idea of having either them or a member of their staff give us a presentation. And it sometimes it's 2 or 3 times in a year because they're so active. And I'm a member of the mental health board, and I love it. And it's extremely productive in that manner. And that's why I'm trying to duplicate it with my words here, that we have those program managers or directors come in and do that. So to limit it to the directors
Yeah, that's fine.
and to limit it to telling us what they do, I don't think we should do that. We should leave it more broad and allow them to speak on the program itself that they're working on, because
So
that
it should be
changes too.
the board chair works with the health officer to identify a program worth highlighting at the next meeting.
How about if we change the wording, if I may, to the board chair works with the health officer to indicate a staff member to make a presentation.
Yeah.
And then it can be a director, it can be.
Yeah.
Well, that's
You know,
pretty
a line
much
level.
what it is.
Yeah, that's what I
now.
was trying, yeah,
Right.
all that stuff's great. Yeah, I don't have any problem with any of
Pretty
that.
much what it is now.
Okay, so if I can. I don't know if I should reword your motion or if you want to reword it.
I'll
Mr.
move
McInnes.
that the board chair work with the health officer to identify a topic and an employee to highlight at the next meeting of the Board of Health. Time frame limited to 10 minutes. And that's about all I can think of. I mean, I just. I'm gonna
Program
do something.
topic.
It'll be
Okay.
sort of an ongoing program.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Mr. Kuntz, are you okay with maintaining your second there?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion by the board? Hearing none, Jennifer, can we have a roll call, please?
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes,
Hagan,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 10, Bel Air building lease with Antrim County, action required. Ms. Peacock.
Yes. So you received in your packet the newly approved Antrim County release for the Bel Air building for the health department. The Antrim County Board has approved that and it's brought to you tonight for requesting your approval. What is happening is the health department is, the building has been owned for almost 20 years by the Northern Health Foundation. It was built by the Northern Health Foundation. And then once the term of financing was complete, during that whole time, the health department entered into a long-term lease with the Northern Health Foundation. This is very typical for how we, how our buildings operate. And at the end of the term of financing, typically they revert to a county or some other sort of entity. Different example, the East Jordan Dental Clinic eventually reverts to the East Jordan Family Health Center on whose property it resides. And so that term has been completed. The building is paid off. It has reverted to the county. The county has developed a lease. We have negotiated with them and have come to an agreement on that lease. And so what we need is, and I have another document here for you, Scott, that I don't know if you've received. You may have received it from the county, but it's a termination of the current lease. And then,
I have not.
okay, I'm going to pass it down to you. Well, actually, the quit claim deed is filed with the county, but the termination of the Northern Health Foundation lease is needed and then entering into the new lease.
Okay, so and if I understand this correctly, Antrim County currently owns the building. We're looking at the termination of lease with Northern Health and entering into a new lease with Antrim County for the same facility.
Correct.
Same dollar figure, or is there an increase?
It's a different amount of money. It's in the lease. I can't remember.
This,
what it
I
is.
think this is
It's by
24,000.
space occupation.
Yeah, it's set up exactly like our lease in Charlevoix is set up. They followed the pattern that Charlevoix and the health department established at the reversion, which I can pull it up.
It's $2,000 a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that what we were currently paying, Lisa?
No, I can look up what we were currently paying. But what this, so the way that this lease is set up is it's $2,000 monthly. 1,000 of that is deposited into a separate account that is intended to keep up the building maintenance. And so the way it works in Charlevoix is we make the phone calls, we arrange the maintenance, but the county holds an account for us to,
Right.
pay for those things.
And I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
falling into the budget appropriately for the
Yeah.
money that we're,
Yeah, and I can look it up for you. I just don't know it off the top of my head,
okay.
but I've got it.
Does the board have any questions regarding this action to, for me to, I guess what I need is authorization from the board, number one, for me to sign the termination of lease with Northern Health And then to sign the new lease with Antrim County.
We want two motions.
We probably need two motions to do that.
All right, I'll make the motion to terminate the lease.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Pallarito, seconded by Commissioner Marcus, to authorize me to sign the termination of lease in the Antrim County building with Northern Health. Sir.
In regards to the current lease, does the Department of Health lease, sublease any area to any other entity? And will they in the future too?
No, so we are moving into a much smaller area. We've been in the building for a long time, and part of it has been empty for a long time.
Right.
So there was never another tenant that moved in there. We have a small room where the Antrim County High Tea keeps some things. And so we'll eventually use that room. It's part of the footprint. So we've been working that out with them, but they don't pay anything for it. It's just really a storage area for them.
Because I remember reading the report that we had to report any sublease revenues, and I was just curious if we had any and intend to. Okay.
Nope, and no. And this will be enough. So our current lease is, it is 2,000. It is exactly the same.
Okay. No changes in dollar figures then. Or to go from one lease to the next.
Well, that's good.
Another just important piece of information is that the environmental health services will be maintained in Bel Air. Much of the family health services have already moved to our Mansalona building to accomplish shrinking down into the smaller footprint and really to be responsive to the community. Most of our family health services, the demand tends to be more in the Mansalona area and around that family resource center. And our environmental health services in Bel Air are extremely busy. It's our busiest office and continues to be. So we do have two buildings in Antrim County. It's different than any of our other counties. But, you know, we do have, and I mentioned in my report that we're looking at that Mansalona space. It's probably going to need to be expanded a little bit. And we're working with the Northern Health Foundation to look at what's possible there. And then we'll bring that back to the board once we've, you know, decided what we'd like to move forward with.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second for me to be authorized to sign this termination of lease. Is there any further discussion?
I'm going to make a suggestion, not with regard to the motion directly, except that I would be more comfortable if motions involving legal documents were in writing in advance. I would like to see, because I mean, you made it, you know, we had a motion which we understood. You summarized it to make sure we understood it. But I would be happier if we adopted as part of our bylaws or just as a custom that any motion for a contract or any document that's legal be in writing in advance.
I
That's all.
totally agree with that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all. We're doing fine here, but I think we'd
Okay.
be a lot better off.
That's not, certainly not a bad idea. That way, in fact, when you made your motion earlier, I was making some footnotes so
Yeah.
that I could summarize it
Yeah,
there too.
exactly, exactly.
Okay. Point well taken, Mr. McInnes. Is there any further discussion on the existing motion for me to sign this document, this termination of lease? Hearing none. Jennifer, roll call vote, please.
Roloff,
Yes.
Aiken,
Yes.
McKinnon,
Yes,
Coon,
Yes.
Pallarito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Ruben,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer, is this the actual document that I'm supposed to sign?
I believe so.
Yes.
Okay. Hearing a lot of yeses, I'm signing it. That one's done. Okay. Now, I believe the board has had an opportunity to review the proposed office building lease agreement, which is between Antrim County and the Northwest Michigan Community Health Agency, also known as the Health Department of Northwest Michigan. This is for space at 203 East Cayuga Street in Bel Air, Michigan. I would entertain a motion to authorize me to sign this document. It's already been signed by Terry Van Alstine, the chairperson for the County Board of Commissioners of Antrim County.
I'll make that motion.
It's been moved by Commissioner Rubin.
Let's, for the purpose of the record, let's state the motion clearly as to what it is.
Mr. Rubin,
Put you on the spot.
Yep.
You want me to summarize it? I don't mind doing.
I
it.
make a motion to allow the chairman of the Board of Health to sign the tenant agreement with Antrim County at 203 Cayuga Street, Bel Air, Michigan.
I'll second that motion.
been moved by Commissioner Rubin, seconded by Commissioner Pallarito. Is there any further discussion? I think this is a fairly standard lease agreement.
And our county attorney has already gone over it, if it makes you feel any better.
Well, it does. And you know, quite frankly, I'm glad you said that. I was thinking about it. Would also be helpful if in the document we have, the motion has a paragraph underneath it that says this contract has been reviewed and approved by civil council.
I hate to
It
throw you
really
under the
helps.
bus, Counselor, but have you had a chance to look at this?
No.
Okay,
I wasn't gonna chime in either, but
Okay.
no, neither lease has been brought to my attention.
okay.
And that we should be
But
doing.
we don't typically, when we use the standard lease that we have already, it's already been through legal review, we typically don't bring it again. Unless there's something substantive that has changed. If you want us to spend that money, then we certainly can do that.
Wouldn't
but
bother
we-
me.
We have
Uh,
13 buildings.
I
and
think
multiple
we're
subleases.
tying up enough of Ms. Vogler's
Yeah, I
time
think
lately,
so,
so.
too.
Okay. All
um,
right.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further board discussion? Hearing none. Jennifer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
McKinnon,
Yes.
Coon,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Rubin,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes,
Hankin.
Yes, I would make a footnote that the term of this lease under item number 2, the term of this lease shall be 5 years commencing on April 1st, 2022. However, we haven't had our meeting until today, so I'm dating it 4/5 of 22. Okay. Thank you. Item number 11, the MERS primary contact change.
This one is pretty simple, and I think Jennifer passed out motion language on each of your desks. And all it is we need to remove Terry Tullis, who was the former CFAO, as the MERS primary contact, and replace her with Dan, who is currently the deputy health officer, and add Holly as well as an additional second contact. So that is a pretty simple change, but MERS requires that that be approved by the Board of Health.
Okay.
I actually just gave that to.
Myself, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll make the motion to remove Terry Tallis, former CFAO, as the MERS primary contact and replace her with Daniel Thorell, Deputy Health Officer, and further to add Holly Campbell, Deputy Health Officer, as an additional contact.
I'll support.
Been moved by myself, supported by Commissioner Rubin. Any further conversation? The only thought that I have right now is we're about to anoint Dan here, but we haven't done so quite yet. So maybe this is a little bit out of order, but motion has been made, second has been made. Is there any further discussion from the board? Hearing none. Jennifer?
McKinnon,
Yes.
Coon,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Rubin,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
yes.
Hankin.
Yes. Okay. Just before we get to staff reports, ladies and gentlemen, it's been almost 2 hours. I'm going to take a 5-minute recess. To order at 6:20 PM. Item number 12 is staff reports. Health Officer, Ms. Peacock.
Okay, thank you. I will keep it brief. I did invite Holly Campbell, our Deputy Health Officer, to speak to you a little bit on the Community Connections Program and the employee experience during the COVID response, which was something that had been requested by Commissioner Coots. So there's just a couple brief things I want to update you on. I won't say anything more about facilities unless you have questions. We've already talked about that. our strategic planning cycle. I just wanted you to know that a new cycle has started. I believe Jane had invited you to come to the practical vision part. If you weren't able to make it, that's no problem. You're certainly welcome to join us at any time. We are doing it via Zoom right now, but a new cycle has started. And I listed the areas of the practical vision that have been identified. What we do now is continue to refine those and work on actual actions and an implementation plan. So we will bring those documents to you as they're completed, but it's a robust process. We have staff and administration involved and it's going really well. So we'll have another three-year strategic plan to share with you soon. Wanted to share just a couple updates on the COVID stuff. Really not a lot to say. We're in a post-surge recovery phase, which we're all very happy about. The state health department is certainly monitoring the activity of the BA2, the subvariant of Omicron, which over in Europe is pretty prevalent, but it's looking like it's less medically significant than some of our previous variants. So that's a good sign, hopefully meaning that we could see more cases, but so far it's not looking like it's increasing hospitalizations than other variants have. So that's a good thing. What we focus on during this time is making sure that people have all the tools that we now have available to them. So access to high quality masks, access to vaccinations, fourth boosters or additional boosters were just approved this week by the FDA and the CDC for adults 50 and over or people who are immunocompromised. And so we are making sure that those are available. We're having an uptick in demand for those and have added clinic time accordingly so that we can get people in when they want to. And then just wanted to let you know that this is actually National Public Health Week. So, congratulations to all of our staff and they really do such a great job and you're certainly welcome to come for a visit anytime you'd like to. Just reach out. We're happy to set that up. We want you to have the opportunity to learn anything you want to about the programs and services that we provide. I think Lisa Vogler may mention this, but an appeal was filed by Attorney Delaney in the Let Them Breathe lawsuit. So that is another step that we will be, responding to or have responded to already. I'm waiting to hear what the next steps will be at this point. So I wanted you to be aware of that. And then we hired another key staff person who is here tonight. I'd like to introduce her to you, Janine Pung. Some of you may know her. She's a local person, lives in East Jordan, right? Yeah. And so Janine comes to us as our marketing and communications coordinator. You may remember that Diane Litzenberger has, she came out of retirement and worked with us for over a year during the pandemic as the marketing and communications coordinator. And so Janine is learning from her currently, but will eventually be taking Diane's place and has a lot of great local experience, but I wanted to bring her to introduce her to you tonight.
Very good.
Welcome.
Thanks, Janine.
I don't know if I should say this, but Janine and I worked together at the nuclear plant in Charlevoix back in 1991.
She still has her hair, Charlie. What happened?
I knew that was gonna happen.
Becky to differ.
But anyway, Janine, yeah, oh, very good, Scott, thank you. Janine, I just wanted to say is super. I think she's gonna be a huge addition to the facility. We worked together for several years. She had to remind me how many, because not only I lost my hair, I've lost brain cells. But anyway, I think she's been a great addition.
Right. We're really excited to have her on our team. So thank you and welcome. And then I'm going to pass the rest of my item over to Holly, who's going to share some information about, how we've responded to the community, but also with the experience that our staff has had during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Am I on?
You are. Hi.
All right, well, I guess I'll be the guinea pig today on staff reports and we'll see how this goes. Let me just pull up my PowerPoint here. Chris, I thought you did this for me. I'm just kidding. I just want to share it and okay, great. So thank you, Lisa, for passing it off to me. Today I'm going to talk about a program called Community Connections. So I'm sure that a lot of you have heard about what we call the Northern Michigan Shire or the Northern Michigan Community Health Innovation Region. The Health Department in Northwest Michigan has been really a huge partner in that since the beginning of this. And we're going to talk about one of the programs under the umbrella of the Shire that really is a boots on the ground type program that really starts providing services and navigation to the clients that we serve. So again, we'll just do a quick review of what the NM Shire is and its mission. So really the mission is to improve population health, increase health equity, and reduce unnecessary medical costs through partnerships and system change. So this is really having staff members that we call community health workers out in the community every single day in the homes, doing home visits and starting to identify needs across our 4 counties. So PowerPoint has gotten very fancy since the last, but this is kind of a view from 30,000 feet, you could say. Jane Sudmacher, who is the Director of Regional Planning, she's also on the call, and this really is her bag. So if I have any questions, Jane, I'll ask you. But really, we talked about the vision of what the Shire is, and then what we go into is the network. So these are the network of groups that really make up the Northern Michigan Shire. So we have a steering committee, the Clinical Community Linkages Work Group. We have the My Thrive Work Group, a learning community. We have residents that have a voice, and then different community partners. So what I'm going to talk today about is one of the tools that we use. So one of the tools is this middle one here, the Community Connections Program. Some of you may be familiar with My Thrive, which is our community health needs assessment and improvement plan project. And then we also use system change. So Community Connections contributes to the outcomes that we have in the Shire. So it contributes to all these different things: health equity, which we're talking about, access, coordination, and then again, alignment. So we're all trying to move in the same direction. So this is just a review of the Community Connections service area. So this is the different hubs that make up the Northern Michigan Shire. So as you can see, our counties that we serve are in dark blue, and that's called the Northwest Hub. There is also the Grand Traverse Region Hub, which includes Grand Traverse County, Leelanau, and Benzie counties. There is a District Health Department number 4 hub, which are these Northeast counties. And then there is also a District Health number 10 hub as well. So we're getting big, and it's all the Northern Michigan Public Health Alliance counties, and we're looking to expand into the District 2 area, and then adding in Central Michigan and the rest of their counties. So medical care really is only 10% of what makes a person healthy. We know that there is a large impact on health that comes from different areas, and these different areas are what we call in public health the social determinants of health. So individual behavior, so items, such as your culture, your beliefs, your personality, social circumstances. This could be wealth, your education level, your family size, and then genetics, things we can't control. So your predisposition to disease, whether that's heart disease, or whether it's cancer or diabetes, and then environmental exposure, groundwater contamination or air pollution, things of that nature. So what we try to do in Community Connections is start combating some of the things that are more social in nature. So you'll see the word, or the acronym, I should say, SDOH quite a bit. And again, that means the social determinants of health. So how this program works is we have partnered with different physician offices, community mental health, all of the dental clinics, FQHCs, random community partners. And what we do is we have a survey. So there is a survey that we want every client that is coming into that provider's office or into this agency to take. And if they have identified a need on this survey, we want to help them. There's a referral generated to the health department. And some of the questions that are on the survey You may have seen them before. In the past 3 months, have you had enough to eat? In the past 6 months, have you been to the emergency department more than 2 times? So these questions, if a client answers yes to, that means that they're having trouble either finding a permanent medical home, they're experiencing food insecurity issues. The list goes on, but those are kind of some of the types of questions that we ask. So once that referral is generated, we have a hub coordinator. And she calls that client, the client consents to this, obviously. She calls the client and says, you identified some needs at your doctor's office. I have a community health worker that can come and meet you at your house and talk about ways that we can help you out. And some people say, yes, that would be great. Some people say, can you just provide me with the United Way's phone number? I can go there and I can do that. Or they maybe need help signing up for medical insurance because it's all online. It's a lengthy application. So those are the types of things that we're helping with. And I have a full list of different pathways that we work. So once the hub coordinator has called the client and they're assigned to a community health worker, these community health workers really start doing the work. They're calling the client, they're going to their homes, they're helping them, get a whatever that they've identified that they need. So let me just show you. So these are just a few of the things that we help with. Housing is a huge one. We have I'm sure as everyone knows here, a housing issue in our 4 counties. We can help them with employment. We help them with food security, clothing, financial assistance, legal services, pregnancy or postpartum. Sometimes we see moms, especially that are coming in maybe for WIC that haven't, had any type of prenatal care yet. And usually when there's something that severe happening, that they're having other issues as well. So we try to connect them with the community health worker internally to get them the help that they need so that not only is their pregnancy successful, but that they can bring baby home to a safe environment. So those are just some of the types of things that we're able to work through. And after the client has gone through this pathway, and this is all evidence-based, it's something that we're certified in. So we were accredited by a special hub institute to be able to perform these. This is all on our electronic medical record. But once that pathway is completed, there's certain measures you have to make. So for instance, we have a client that's having a mental health problem. We, when we're working the pathway, when the community health worker is working with this client, they have to go to 3 mental health appointments before we're going to close them out. We're not just going to say, oh, you know what, here's the number to CMH, call, make sure you can get there, make sure you have childcare for that day, all these different things, because evidence shows a client that goes to a mental health appointment 3 times is more likely to continue their therapy. So once that's done, we send a referral feedback form to the provider. So wherever we got that referral from, then that primary care physician knows, hey, I saw that you were enrolled in Community Connections and you're getting some behavioral health therapy. Really proud of you, because we also know that the primary care physician can't solve all their problems. So this is across the whole Shire region. So this is not just Northwest, but in 2021, we had 16,800 web portal screenings. So that means that that's how many referrals or how many screenings of those survey questions were done. The number of total referrals was 2,641 and accepted services was 1,084. So as you can see in the pandemic year, that really increased really across the board. And we got really busy during that time when people were losing their jobs, they had loss of income, they were being laid off, schools were closed, childcare was pretty much non-existent. So that's just a graph for you to look at. Oh, that's got pretty spread out, but these are the reasons then for our Northwest hub. So I'll just highlight these. So most of our referral reasons that we get are behavioral health related, then we move into housing and shelter, and then we move into emergency department usage. And then we have a really high acceptance rate, which we're really proud of at Northwest. that our acceptance rate, so once that hub coordinator calls that client and asks, do you want to be part of these services? 73% of them people say yes. And these are just some client quotes that we've had. The University of Michigan, we partnered with them and did a survey of clients that have participated in the Community Connections program. And 100% of clients that were surveyed said that they felt like they were listened to, that they were kept up to date, that the community health worker or the person they worked with were dependable. 98% said that we were dependable source to help them navigate, different things. 98% thought that we cared about them, that we were easy to reach, and that we were honest. So I think that's just a really great way to show the great work that the community health workers and the Community Connections team does. So, and then this is always something I like to share. So MDHHS did a study on Medicaid claims, because what we also do in Community Connections is we have plans with Michigan Medicaid health plans. So we are partnered and contracted with them, and they send us lists and lists and lists of clients. Sometimes they're really big, sometimes they're not so big, but these are clients that either aren't using all their benefits. So maybe they're not using their dental benefit, or maybe they're going to the emergency department too many times. Like, there's reasons for that. It costs money to do these things. It costs money for people to come to the emergency department when there's actual emergencies that need to be tended to. So what they found was that the Northern Michigan Shire, that when we're doing the Community Connections program, is that there's a 23.5% overall decrease in emergency department visits, that there's a 26.6 overall decrease in inpatient visits, and that there's an 18% overall decrease in per member per month cost for the Medicaid health plans. So by them partnering with us, we're saving them money every single month, and we're getting paid to do that. So that's really all I have on Community Connections. And then I want to address Commissioner Kunz's question. He had an ask for us to, and I'll make this quick, I'm not sure how much time I'm at, to share some employee specific challenges that were faced during the pandemic. And I had Jennifer pass out a survey that was just released a couple of weeks ago. And the impact of the pandemic on staff is really difficult to discuss still. We remain in an incident command structure. We remain we're always on. So we haven't come past this. Yes, we're moving in a recovery phase, but a lot of us still feel that we're still in it. So this is just a survey that's done. It's called the Public Health Win Survey. And what that stands for is the Public Health Workforce Interest and Needs Survey. So this is done every few years. And they surveyed 45,000 people across the nation. Our agency was included in this. So I'm not sure how many people of our staff did reply, but it was sent out. So as you can see, nationwide, more than 50% of public health employees report at least one symptom of post-traumatic stress. So that means having nightmares. That means being startled easily. And I'm sure a lot of us here have that, from different experiences in our life. So as we continue to combat COVID-19 and the pandemic, we're also seeing staff that are experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. The survey showed that 2 in 5 public health executives reported being bullied, threatened, and harassed. 3 in 5 of those public health executives felt that their health expertise was undermined or challenged. 1 in 3 employees are considering leaving their organization within the next year. So across the nation, there potentially could be a mass exodus of public health employees. And more than 1 in 5 employees rate their mental health as either fair or poor. And I don't share this to make anyone pity us or feel bad, because we have stayed here and we are committed to the agency that we do have. And this really shows it. And this is an exercise that Kathleen did, the Director of Community Health. And we performed this during an all-staff meeting where we were trying to brighten the light a little bit about what did we learn in 2021. We learned tons of things. We had astronomical challenges. You know, I could sit here and talk about the struggle of telecommuting or the struggle of vaccinating over 60,000 people, you know, the trenches we were in and, you know, drudge all that up. But really what we want to move forward is we want this. We want to focus on our fundamentals, our agency fundamentals. And the bigger the word in this picture is the more staff that suggested that's what they learned. So they learned how to speak up. They learned how to communicate better, learning how to assume positive intent, learning that we always find a way, that we live the mission, that we're patient, and that we're collaborative. So this is something that a lot of us have on our backgrounds, on our desktops at work. And we just, we're really proud of that. So, and, you know, lastly, really just despite the challenges, you know, we are really committed and, but we've been through a lot, you know, we want to be acknowledged and supported. And I so appreciate the motions that were done today. I think that staff and the leadership team will be really impressed and happy to hear that we get to, you know, give a verbal report or a specific presentation. And yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Does anybody have any questions for Holly?
I do, but I don't know if it has to do with you or it's Kathleen. The written, the help, the center, the examples, stories, success stories that we have here.
Oh, that might be Kathleen.
It's on, it's March 30th, behavioral health success stories through our centers. The two examples, the only question I came of reading these two is I'm assuming they're both minors. And there's no mentions of parents in either one of these examples. Were they ever involved?
Most of our services.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Most of our services are not provided to a minor in consent in our health centers.
Oh, not
They are
provided.
not.
I'm sorry. I got one ear that functions, the other one's useless.
I understand. So the question was, there was no there was no talk about the
In the
parent in
example
either of
given,
those.
there's no reference to parents.
Sure. So I don't know for those specific students, because I did not ask the question. But most of our providers do see students with a consent from the parent. It is really for each center. It's a handful of students a year that don't have a consent for parent so they're seen under what we call minor consent. Because there are services by Michigan law that students are able to seek out without a consent from a parent.
I'm aware of that. The
Yeah.
example given here was clearly that he's being bullied in school, not at home. So if he's being bullied in school, the number one thing we'd think would be was a consultation with the parents, right?
Mhm.
There's lots of examples you just meant that you referenced, so to speak, that there is their consent for their own safety, you know, because you don't know what's going on at home. But I'm just, this is one of my biggest issues I have, that parents aren't involved in these type of things. It's a mental health consultation, a mental health therapist that goes on a kid's record, that they're being treated for mental health potential conditions without the parents' consent. So I just want to know whether or not it is a practice.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the first things that our therapists do is call the parents if the student's not there on a minor consent. If they are there on a minor consent, the therapist will work with the student, and usually we have a parent consent within the third session or so.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to what constitutes a minor consent.
Oh, so for the state of Michigan, if you are 14 years or 14 to 18 years old, you can seek services for mental health and sexual health services.
Without consent.
Without consent, yeah, by the state law.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
I guess if you would, I have a question that probably you could answer as well. Related, I just was traveling around the state this recently and been hearing a lot of unfortunate the suicides among school-age children, resulted from depression and coming out of the COVID pandemic and schools closed and that type of thing. what have we implemented to ID these mental health issues amongst our school age children? Do we have a program that we can track them, a questionnaire, some type of survey that to identify this issue, because that's tragic, or these kids taking their own lives.
Well, any of the students that come to our clinics are provided an assessment. It's a pretty lengthy assessment that is associated then with their client record. There's a Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth is the survey. The state administers that and the schools participate in it. So they have the survey go out every 2 years. It is completed by middle school students and high school students. I believe it's 7th, 9th, and 11th grade that it's administered. The school has to opt into doing that though. But there's a lot of questions in there about mental health and suicide ideation. If they've thought about carrying out a plan, if they have a plan. So that information is tracked in that manner that we can access. Schools get information about their school specifically from that survey. So we're able to drill down if the school will share the information with us, we're able to drill down and look at those details for each district. And that's a lot of the data that we use to submit for funding for these programs.
Sorry, I'm going to be learning more and more, I'm sure, but
Sure.
the Community Connections, is that a partnership with CMH? Okay. So you guys, does the health department hire and retain their own therapists, or is it through CMH, through their, I'm looking for double taxation here is what I'm getting at, to be honest with you. And we fund a department, we fund this, but yet we have two different entities providing services. Are they communicating with each other? Is the health record shared? I'm assuming the examples given here, they're eligible for Medicaid. At that point, that's a responsibility of the CMHs to take care of, which is governed and overseen by your local government rather than the state. You know what I'm getting at?
I do. So the Northern Michigan Community Health Innovation Region is the overarching body that oversees the Community Connections program. Our health department is one of the health departments who is involved in that. Community mental health has been part of our steering committee, which is the governing body of that Community Health Innovation Region since the very beginning. You could ask Christine about it anytime. She would tell you all about it. So that program is supported by grant funding by a few different sources. It's true graded funding. It is supported by grant funding. We build the Medicaid health plans as Holly described for the work that we do for them. We have some funding from Delta Dental Foundation to specifically work with people who are accessing or not accessing the oral health system. And we are right now just receiving a grant from the Michigan Center for Rural Health, which also is intended to expand the capacity of community health worker workforce. Two different things. The community health workers and Community Connections are not providing mental health therapy. They are connecting people to resources. So one of the biggest needs we see in our community is behavioral health. And so what the community health worker does in that case is work with people to see, do they have barriers? Do they need behavioral health services? If they identify that as a need, then we work with them to overcome transportation barriers, childcare barriers, access to care barriers. So we may very well connect them with community health if they qualify for those services, or we may advocate for them to get into a private provider. We aren't providing those actual services ourselves. Okay. But then the school-based, what Kathleen is talking about is our school-based services. And to the questions about youth suicide, it's a huge concern for all of us. And I think one of the things that the health department does that in partnership with the schools, that is probably the most helpful, useful part of some of the services that we provide for kids is providing mental health services in schools, making it easy for them to access those services when they need them. I think very few, like Kathleen described, children and students access the services under a minor consent. Usually the parents are very concerned too. We get tons of referrals from parents and teachers. And if a kiddo is coming to us on a minor consent, we have to see them. We have to comply with that minor consent law. And so that's part of, as our licensed professionals have to do in any setting, in our setting, they have to comply with that law, but they work they know that the parent is a critical part of that child's world. And so they work really hard to work together. Sometimes, and most of the time, like she said, we have a parent consent within a couple of visits, but sometimes there are kids who don't have a parent who can support them for whatever reason. Sometimes there's cases of abuse, sometimes there's cases of substance abuse, sometimes that kid needs help. And so it's a place where they can turn. And because the services are available in school, they miss very little school to receive the services. And often, sometimes what we see in teens and children is, they have waves of mental health issues. It's not necessarily something that they're going to have for the rest of their life. For some people it is, but for others, it's this up and down stress and, the circumstances around school or family or jobs or bullies or things like that, that we can help them get through. So.
You did a little bit more than I was expecting, but I was getting at the root of my issue is two separate, I'll call them organizations, providing services under different realm of authority. You have your local controllers, CMHs, whether they're sparsely located or not, and you have Department of Health, both trying to provide a service that answer to two different authorities. And even though they're still governed by the same laws, I'm just trying to figure out why are we so splintered in that area to where we have a Department of Health that provides those services that answers to a state, I'll call it bureaucratic board, and then you have your local CMHs that answer to your local authorities that have better oversight to better understanding what's going on. I can't figure out what the benefit is of having these two things work and what happens. I'm just want to know whether or not it's the best system. And we were talking about at the state level, the state is trying to merge the mental health services under the umbrella of the state right now. I think there's over 70 organizations that are opposing it right now, including the Michigan Association of Counties. So I'm just trying to figure out, I'm trying to better understand what's behind that. And I fully appreciate the success and what it does and why we do it and why there's an assessment and why there's a couple of visits before the parents are involved. That makes sense out in a law enforcement point of view. But that's all. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would add to that might give you a little bit more information is just that, we don't duplicate, we work together.
Okay.
And so CMH typically sees people that have a moderate to severe mental health diagnosis. We see people who typically have either, a diagnosis of stress or, mild depression or anxiety, that mild to moderate. And that's a big gap in service, actually, finding behavioral health services for people who have mild to moderate diagnoses. When they have moderate to severe, we refer them to community mental health and we make sure they get in. So, and vice versa, when they can't see someone because they don't qualify for our services, they hope we have services in school for those kids.
Thank
So,
you. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kathleen. Any further questions from the board? Thank you. In the interest of time, I will, unless there are specific questions that the board would have for any of our directors, I would entertain a motion to accept these written reports as presented.
I'll move that we accept the written reports as presented. They were very informative and found them very useful.
Moved by Commissioner McInnes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Pallarito. Jennifer?
Rubik,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Lincoln,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes.
Coon,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. To that end, Mr. Brown, I was asked to introduce you. Mr. Brown is a commissioner from Otsego County and is here as an alternate for Commissioner Powers, who was not able to be here. So there was a request for me to introduce you, Bruce. So this is Mr. Brown. All right. Item number 13. I'm going to make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268H to discuss attorney-client privileged written legal opinion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Pallarito. Any further discussion? Jennifer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Roloff,
Yes.
Aiken,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Coon,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Ruben,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to our little conference room right outside here. Members of the audience, you're welcome to stay. We welcome back into open session. We do have a few other items left on our agenda. I appreciate everybody's patience. At, I think I have 7:54 p.m., Jennifer. I'm going to make a motion. I move that the opinion and recommendation of our council be adopted and accepted by the board, and that the board authorizes her to proceed with negotiations with Ms. Peacock and her counsel under the terms and conditions discussed in closed session, subject to final review, approval, and vote of the board of any monetary settlement offer or amount and all written terms, conditions, and agreements.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner McGinnis. Jennifer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ruben,
Yes.
Marcus,
No.
Roloff,
Yes.
Aiken,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Coon,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown.
No.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 14, our interim health officer's compensation. I would point out that I had Jennifer print out for each of you. I think you each have a letter signed by Alexis D. Travis, who's a senior deputy director from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. This is official correspondence approving Dan Thorell to serve as our acting health officer. To be
Actually just determines that he meets the requirements. I think to be more accurate, although.
Well,
No, it approves it.
it
Oh,
says we received communication requesting approval of Mr.
Oh, I'm
Thorell to
sorry.
serve.
Excuse me. I was looking at
That's
the
all right.
second paragraph. Excuse me.
It's all right. So, and the third paragraph says we look forward to working with Mr. Thorell. So I'm assuming that's their approval.
Yeah.
But so I make that recommendation to let you know that Mr. Thorell is approved by the state to serve as our interim health officer. He and I have had a brief conversation regarding his compensation as the interim health officer. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. You would like to receive the health officer salary for the time that you serve as the interim health officer at the rate currently paid to our health officer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I would also point out that once Dan is in the position of interim health officer, starting on, I believe, April 30th, we will not be double paying him. So we will be saving some of the salary and wages until we place another health officer in place. Do I have a motion to approve that salary recommendation? And we need to word that better, Charlie. I know what you were thinking already. And I couldn't agree more.
I move that the Board of Health compensate Dan Thorell in his position as acting health officer at the same rate as the current health officer, effective April 30, 2022, when he assumes that role. That sound close? Did people buy that? story?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
after, when we find somebody, will he go back to his regular role?
Yes, my understanding is that Dan is willing to serve as the interim health officer. I don't think he's going to apply for the position as health officer, but
You may
who
like
knows
it.
what may happen down the road. I won't speak for Dan on that, but when he is no longer our interim, he would go back into his environmental services director position.
Deputy health.
Deputy health officer, I apologize, Dan.
No problem.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just wondering, a lot of these jobs, I mean, Ms. Peacock did this a lot of years. Sometimes you start out at a lower rate of pay and then you get, when you've been there for 5 or 10 years, are we just, I mean, in one sense, I'm not terribly worried about it because he's not going to be doing it that long, but I mean, I don't just hire somebody at the rate of pay of the guy that left. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't have the same experience or skill set.
Well, he's
They-
got
they grow-
25 he's
they
got
grow into
25 years in public health.
Yeah. So
Are you gonna find somebody else to do it?
Christian,
Just waiting for him to get ready.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, obviously, when you're in negotiations, there's a lot more things at play and there's a lot more options at the table during a negotiation for a contract. So it's not always about the salary. It might be all kinds of other stuff. So I'm not so worried about that right now. I think it's a very fair ask. So especially when doing two duties, and thank you.
Any further discussion? Jennifer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
McGinnis,
Yes.
Coon,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Rubing,
yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes.
Hankin.
Yes. Committee reports. Personnel and Finance Committee.
I move, make a motion that the finance committee met and recommends approval of the March bills in the amount of $729,973.33 and the March employee expenses of $12,718.11.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner McGinnis, seconded by Commissioner Pellerito. Jennifer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
McGinnis,
Yes.
Coon,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Rolla,
Yes.
Hankin.
Yes. Program and Evaluation Committee. And I think at this point, the next item also is public notice rules discussion, both of which fall under Mr. Rubing being the chair of that committee. Is now an appropriate time to discuss those rules?
Sure.
We're not going to vote on them today, but we are going to discuss them briefly.
Yeah, so our committee met and we changed a few things, not anything big, I don't think, but I think we got something here that we can all live with. I guess if there's any comments, anything that anyone wants us to look at, it'd be useful to have.
Is this going to replace the public comment rules that I read prior to public comment earlier?
Correct.
Okay. So instead of how many points? 13,
13,
12, 13.12 points. We would be having 2 points. Mr. McInnes, I thought you had the look that you wanted to make a statement. If you do, sir, go ahead.
Thank you very much. First question, what problem is this solving?
Well, the rules that we have now are childish is what we
All right, thank you.
discussed about.
That's
in-
fine.
in-
Let me go through my comments then.
Oh,
Number one is there is a 3-minute, well, first of all, it begins by saying the following information is provided. So I don't know what that means, but let's go to rule number 1. There is a 3-minute time limit for each speaker, correct?
Mhm.
2 sentences down, it says there's a 6-minute time limit. Why do you have two time limits?
It's not a 6 time limit. It's if one person donates their time to another one.
So the other person has a 6-minute time limit.
Correct.
If I bring my granddaughter with me and I say I'm speaking for her, I get 6 minutes.
Not unless the chairman gives you that.
Okay, let's say that I pick the person sitting next to me and I say I'm speaking for this person. The chairman has to decide whether I have 6 minutes.
Mhm.
Okay, so then we have 65 people speaking here in this evening. The first thing that you left out, because these rules are childish, was a sign-up sheet. Why would you leave out a sign-up sheet?
What good does a sign-up sheet do when, according to law, you have to let anyone who wants to speak during public comment speak, whether they sign up or not?
But if you have 65 people and one of them is going to pick their friend in the audience to speak for, and then that person they're speaking for sits back there and we lose track of who's doing what, then that person can't speak because we didn't have a list. So
Has
why
that
would
ever
you-
happened to you?
Well, if it weren't for the list in November, bear in mind, Emmett County uses these rules. These rules were written in blood. These are not accidental rules. They are not childish rules. They are rules that reflect something called reality. So you get rid of the list. So, and Scott had no difficulty referring to the list. And in November, if we hadn't had the list, we wouldn't be able to tell what exactly was going on because, first of all, there'd be a crowd waiting to figure out when do I get to speak, and they'd be jumping up and down. With the list, they have order. So why would you get rid of the list?
That could be something that we revisit. On
Okay, That's a good start. Now, why would you get rid of the requirement that a person stand up at the podium next to the microphone? Why would you get rid of that rule? You got rid of that rule.
I'm going to make a recommendation that, that we review both sets of the public notice rules discussion that was provided to us this evening and the current public comment rules. I think we need to send this back to the committee and give it.
I
some
agree,
further-
Scott. Let me just go through just a few more and I'll do them quickly.
All right, sir.
Our current rules say a person may speak only once at public comment. Why would you get rid of that requirement?
We aren't getting rid of that
Well,
requirement.
I don't think I can find that in there.
The speed limit says it's 55 too.
No, I'm not talking about driving on the highway. I'm talking about a rule that says. a speaker-
Your assumptions on all of these is that we have a bunch of disorderly, evil people that are coming to these meetings.
Why would you force that? Why would you not tell them to go up to the lectern and speak? What burden does that create on a person?
Just because it's not in the rules doesn't mean that the chairman can't ask a person to step up to the lectern.
Why would you take it out of the rules? Why does he have to tell them one at a time?
They know as soon as the first person comes, it's obvious.
Really? Now, I believe as I went through this, you deleted any reference to speaking vulgarities or making a personal attack on a board member or health department employee. Why would you take that out?
Well, that one we did discuss in depth in committee. And here's the question. Do you want people to speak vulgarities?
Apparently they can.
No, under our rules, we ask them to be courteous and polite.
Well, this is a little more specific.
Yeah, this is telling them what not to do. We're telling them what we want them to do.
From
There's a
what
big difference. Sometimes if you put the idea in somebody's mind, they might do it. Do you want them to speak vulgarities? Then tell them not to. If you want them to speak politely and courteously, then ask them to speak politely and courteously.
Okay, if a speaker is called out of order, the speaker will not be able to speak again at the same meeting. Why would you take that rule out?
That's still in.
And I don't think it is. I scanned this kind of quickly. Now, members of the public shall refrain from interrupting the designated speaker. Why would you take that rule out?
It's not out. It says right in here, shall refrain from speaking out of turn.
What does out of turn mean? Because there's no list.
You just illustrated my point of
No,
childlessness.
what does out of turn mean? How are they in turn? There's no list. What is turn? How exactly do they get out of turn if there's no list?
Yeah. Okay, excuse me, can I say something?
Yes.
And members of the public are not to approach board members or distribute any materials during the meeting. Why would you take that out?
If people have something that they want to give to me, I'm willing to read it.
That's fine, but you want them to come up and start handing out materials and disrupting the meeting?
It's not disruptive to me, but if
Well,
you
good for
prefer,
you. It's disruptive for me. It's also poor decorum to allow people to come in and treat this as a circus. Well, anyway, I just wanted to go through quite a few. I thought these rules have been working just fine, and although it says 2 rules, they're not 2 rules. There's more than 2. It's just that they're all in kind of a jumble here. But this also says, member of the public shall refrain from speaking out of turn during public comment and the duration of the meeting. I have no idea what that sentence means. So anyway, I think we need to do some work on this.
Well,
Ms.
that's-
Roloff, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why we're discussing this now. I mean, this is a work session or a regular section. This is the only time that we've had really time to discuss it. I wasn't at your meeting and I appreciate what you come back with. I don't approve all of it. That's okay. Because we're gonna discuss it again before we vote on it. So if you got any, and I'm glad you're speaking up because you got something you don't really care for and don't like, bring it out in the open. Let's don't just put it in that little pile and forget about it. I don't know what the rest of you think, but I appreciate you taking time out to do this. I don't approve of everything that's in here, but that's my decision. And we'll have time to sit and get it so we all can agree on.
Mr. Marcus.
I do agree with you on one point, putting it in a paragraph form for the public to read sometimes can easily be misread. Sometimes breaking out in a very simple statement is a lot easier for the public to just scan through and
Right.
make sure. So I agree with you there. I also agree with you that there are some things that I would see no reason why we wouldn't take it out or why we would take it out. But I know the goal was to take out some of the, as you said, childish references. And it did get, you listen to these, it been read at the beginning, you start to shake your head going, I'm 50 years old and I gotta listen to someone tell me, what I can and cannot say in such in a specific manner. It gets to be a little insulting in itself.
Yeah.
So the goal would be to reduce and get more simple, just simple. And as the argument for the sign up, I can see the argument both ways, but if I'm sitting, I think if we stated that I get a lot of people, I go to meetings and they don't speak. The only reason why they speak because they get choked up. They don't do well in front of people. That's the only reason why they don't speak. But darn it, they want to. But if I could speak if I'm thinking the same thing they are, they should have a right to go up to the podium, and this is my way of saying it, and state the person they want to allow speak for them. And this is where the 6-minute rule comes in. Now they got the 6 minutes, but that person has to state, I would like him to speak for me on my behalf. Thank you. And now they know my name and I've designated somebody. I didn't arbitrarily do what you did, point somebody.
Yeah.
We can still find a middle house, but there is some language in here that's absolutely ridiculous. And I think we're going to get there if we just do it right.
That's on the public rules notice. Mr. Rubing, was there anything further you wanted to update us on the program and evaluation committee? Not at this time. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the item number 16 now on our agenda, which is public comment. And the 2 ladies who did sign up waived their earlier comment and would like to address the board at this time. Mary Moore from Emmett County. By the way, ma'am, you have 3 minutes as a reminder.
Well, I certainly appreciate your attention and time. I realize how late it gets here. I just have a couple of thoughts to share, and I sincerely hope that they help you. That's my goal. Number one, emergency powers of the health department, the emergency powers remain a significant concern to the tax-paying public, people like me. COVID has receded some from the public minds for the moment, but I and others remain very concerned about the prolonged, coordinated, and dictatorial use of emergency powers by public health officials here and everywhere. This department today still claims to have COVID emergency powers that they can exercise at will. This is not personal. Okay, the pressure, I think, to use and abuse these powers has come down from both state and federal agencies. And it's not an indictment at all of the wonderful, warm, nice people, talented people that work here. It's a comment on how the government works. Okay, so that's number one on emergency powers. Number two, I encourage you, the board, Mr. Chairman, to maintain your checks and balances philosophy. This health department is composed, again, of talented, well-meaning people, but it's also an arm of the government that has a big budget, police powers, and I'm finding scores of supporting think tanks, foundations, endowments, and similar organizations, well-funded, that support public health in general. Your board is the check and balance on this public health portion of government, which even now threatens to swallow up every other branch the way it's happening in Australia and Canada. Very important. I encourage you philosophically to continue to see this board as the vital check and balance that is supposed to exist, according to Ms. Chrysler's University of Michigan boss, Professor Jacobson, who said so during the Public Health 101 lecture that Lisa Peacock recommended everybody watch in February. How am I doing on time? One more minute. Arbitrary and capricious is the legal standard, as she mentioned, that is needed, that you have to meet in court if you want to say that a health officer did something wrong. And that's very, very difficult. That's not the best check and balance. This board is the check and balance. All right. Number three, just on the topic of an audit. Forgive me if this is already happening, I don't know, but the job of the health department is to promote and safeguard the public health. Are we looking at things like all-cause mortality in our 4 counties to see if public health improved the past 2 years? My suggestion. Have we looked at whether myocarditis, pericarditis, blood clots have gone up in these 4 counties in the last 2 years? My suggestion. Last but not least, please, if you haven't done so, watch Ron Johnson's hearing. It's 4.5 hours well spent. I just want to repeat myself from last time. Thank you very much for your time and all the work that you all put into this.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Brenda Polbeda? Did I get it right this time? Polbeda? I'm sorry. You also have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. On October 22nd, 2020, the following topics were discussed by the FDA during a meeting of the FDA Vaccines and Related Biological Advisory Committee, Biological Products Advisory Committee. This is taken from slide number 16. I'm going to run through these really quickly, so I'll probably mispronounce most of the medical terms, although I'm familiar with most of them. Because of vaccines, we are taking a closer look at all of these conditions. Gilead-Barré syndrome, acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, transverse myelitis, encephalitis, myelitis, encephalocephalic myelitis, meningoencephalitis, meningitis, encephalopathy, convulsions, seizures, stroke, narcolepsy, cataplexy, anaphylaxis, acute myocardial infarction, myocarditis, pericarditis. Be sure to keep a close eye on that one. Autoimmune disease, deaths, pregnancy and birth outcomes, including women's health issues, periods, missed periods, ovulation cycles being disrupted by vaccines. Okay, so that's that section. Other acute demyelinating diseases, non-anaphylactic allergic reactions, thrombocytopenia, disseminated intravascular coagulation, venous thromboembolism, arthritis, endothelial, joint pain, Kawasaki disease, multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children, vaccine-enhanced diseases. This is the FDA who discussed this in committee before the vaccines were distributed. So as citizens, we're asking you to please take a look at this, have our health department in the capacity that they are allowed to do. In fact, I would say at this point, obligated to do, look at some of the local problems that our people are having. I know people who are having some of these problems, you know, not deaths per se. I know maybe there was one, but please look into it, you know, for us, for the people. We're taxpayers. We understand your budget, you know, listening to this tonight. I mean, it's overwhelming how much to keep track of. I get that. But please use the power that you have to take a look at some of these things that are happening to people. VAERS is one of the places that medical providers are supposed to report these conditions to after people are vaccinated, pharmacies and so forth. But if the people don't come and tell their provider that this happened to them, oftentimes they go unnoticed. But I'm afraid we're going to be seeing a lot more of these types of things in our population. So I'm really glad, on switching gears a little, on that the health department is taking steps to help people with their mental health issues.
Ma'am, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Oh.
your time has expired.
Oh, it has. Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't time myself this time. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for listening. And again, thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak?
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
my name is Tracy Skinner and I wasn't planning on talking, but there's a few things that came up that I wanted to kind of add my 2 cents into. And first of all, I wear a mask because I work with young children who are not able to be vaccinated yet. And so I'm going into homes across northern Michigan with birth to 3-year-olds and their siblings. So for me, it's just easier to wear a mask rather than worry about where everybody's been traveling and what they're bringing back. And that's my choice. So my comments are, first of all, I want to go back to, I think Commissioner Marcus had asked some questions about this mental health issues. I am a mental health professional. I've worked in the private nonprofit counseling field for 26 years prior to becoming employed in my current position. And there is no duplication that's happening. Community mental health has a definite role, but they serve a very small section that can be served. When I've made referrals there, you have to be really in an active mental health crisis to be served. So the populations that are being served by the health department, they never would get into to be seen at CMH. This is not a duplication of service. And if there wasn't a need for it, they wouldn't be going. When people would bring their kids into counseling, that would require parents taking time off of work, missing work, jeopardizing their job, transportations, kids missing school, transporting them long distances. So the school-based health centers, to me, has become a very efficient way to provide services in our communities that are least disruptive to our families and our kids. So that was just my one point. The public comment issue, I had no problem. I was not insulted by you reading of the public comments and the guidelines for that. I actually find it kind of reassuring and refreshing that there is some expectations that are laid out in the beginning, because after watching the September Board of Health meeting that has caused this group to not be allowed at the Charlevoix Public Library, I think there's a reason for all of those things that are in place. And, you know, I really don't see that that's solving any issues, but that's just my piece. And I guess the other thing, I'd just like to commend our health officer. She was just received a reward earlier this week, an award by the community for her service. Then the last little tidbit, I don't want people reporting adverse vaccine effects to you as our Board of Health. There is a method to have that happen. And so I appreciate that there are concerns people have about vaccines, but there's a method for having that reported to a centralized system and having that handled. And that's not being reported to us. we report to this vaccine adverse, effects. So I think those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address the board? Hearing none, we will close public comment. Be brief, but commissioners update. Mr. Rubin.
I'm good.
Thank you. Mr. Coons.
Pass.
Thank you. Mr. McGinnis.
Pass.
Thank you. Ms. Roloff.
Pass.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I'm going to go along with the rest of them.
Always good to have you here, Bruce. Thanks for attending in Julie's absence. Mr. Pallarito.
Nothing today, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Marcus.
Yeehaw.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Done.